Well. Welcome everybody to the first ever episode of Imagine the Pop, a wrestling podcast. My name's Matty B. It's great to have you here with us. Thank you for taking the time to download or stream this podcast. We're going to have a lot of fun. It's a jam-packed show because we've got some massive recaps of Smackdown and Raw to get through because they were big shows. We are 3 weeks away from WrestleMania. That's right, 3 weeks away from WrestleMania, which means we're in the home stretch, which means everything is ramping up. Everything is getting very, very exciting as we build the big matches for Mania. So we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to go through, a few surprises, but we're going to start with the news. Okay, so here is the news for this week, and it's the week that was. But before we get into it, I need to clear something up. When it comes to wrestling, there's a lot of grey, because as wrestling fans we love the story, but we also love the speculation. We love what we're presented in the shows week to week, but we also love behind the scenes. We love the dirt sheets. We love the wrestler Twitter accounts and interviews that are sometimes in character and out of character, outside of the TV programs, and it can make everything a bit murky as to, is this wrestler still on TV? Are they off TV? Are they in contract? Are they heading to Mania? Are they not heading to Mania? What's going on? Are they injured? Are they not injured? So there's a lot of grey. So what I really want to do, and this is what I'm going to do moving forward from this episode on, is I'm going to do the news, but I'm going to try and split it into two distinct sections. I'm going to have the narrative news, which is what WWE or AEW or whoever is feeding us in the narrative in the TV show. And then I'm also going to have the out of narrative news, which is the more speculative industry Twitter bait type news. So let's start with the narrative news. And the narrative news for me over the last week is that Johnny Gargano is back in NXT. Oh, I love Johnny Gargano. You're going to find out he's one of my favourite wrestlers, and his return to NXT was fantastic, was really special. If you saw NXT last week, if you've been watching it recently, you know Grayson Waller, he's been on fire. He's been the most interesting part of NXT for the last month or two, having a bit of a feud with Shawn Michaels, of all people, mostly carried out through social media posts, and basically trying to bait Shawn Michaels into a match with him at Stand and Deliver, which is the NXT show on WrestleMania weekend. And I thought, maybe I hoped we'd get Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement for one match with Grayson Waller, kind of like an Kevin Owens match at WrestleMania, where it's more of a brawl than it is a match. So if he's not 100% fit, we can kind of work around it. We're not getting that. But Johnny Gargano, who loves and bleeds NXT, he's coming out to fight for Shawn Michaels, and so he came out last week to surprise Grayson Waller, and that is exciting. For me, that is worth watching Stand and Deliver, having Johnny Gargano there, and I think him and Grayson Waller are going to put on one hell of a show. So that's the narrative news. That's the big piece of news that I want to cover from the last week. I know there's lots of other stuff going on. We'll get into it with the recaps. But now let's go to the other news, the more speculative industry news. And the first thing we've got to look at is Bray Wyatt. Because Bray Wyatt was set for a match at WrestleMania. Everything was pointing towards Bray Wyatt versus Bobby Lashley. Now, there's a bit of controversy, which we might get onto at some point, about splitting up Bobby and Brock after their match finished in a DQ at Elimination Chamber. Everyone thought they were heading straight for Mania, and then suddenly Brock is now in an angle with Omos, and Bobby Lashley looks like he would be in something with Bray Wyatt. The Brock and Omos one is still going ahead. They started building Bobby and Bray, but over the weekend, Bray Wyatt had to pull out of the Madison Square Garden house show that WWE were putting on. And at first it was reported for a physical issue, but there was nothing confirmed as to how long he was going to be out for and if he was just missing that one show. Latest reports say that Bray is now going to be out for an unknown amount of time. And it's thrown into question whether he's actually going to be at Mania. And if he's not going to be at Mania, what does that mean for Bobby? Now Bobby's come out on Twitter and he's said that he's worked too hard to miss out and he's gonna fight for a spot. So we'll see how that all unfolds. But right now, Bray Wyatt looks to be missing in action. If it's a physical illness or if it's something else, wish him all the best. Don't wish harm on anybody. Want him to get well soon. And he's going to miss that match with Bobby by all accounts. It looks like it. So what's Bobby going to do? I don't know. He's done really well the last year, having his world title run. So I want to see him do something. It'll be exciting. But unfortunately, we're not going to get any Bray. Good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. I've been a bit mixed on Bray since he came back. But, hopefully he gets better soon and he comes back better than ever. And then the only other piece of other news that I want to reference, because it's quite a big deal, are the Bella twins. The Bella twins are no more. Nikki and Brie Bella are now the Garcia twins. They've updated all of their socials, all of their handles. The Bella twins have been massive mainstays of WWE for a long time. They've been part of the Total Divas. They've had their own spin-off reality show. They were obviously at the start and forefront of the women's revolution over the last 10 years. So they've played a big role. They've had books and all sorts. They've come out on special shows and events. They've been a big part of WWE, and it looks like no more. It looks like they've come to the end of their contract, and WWE and the Bella twins, or the Garcia twins, haven't been able to agree, and so they've parted ways, and that's it. So I wonder what you guys think about the Bella twins being no more in WWE. There was a bit of a hoo-ha around the Raw 30 episode where the Bella twins thought they were booked and then weren't there, and then took to social and a few other interviews complaining that WWE couldn't find a space for them on such a prestigious show. It rubbed me up the wrong way a little bit. So for me personally, I think, you know what? Bella twins, if they want to go do their thing, if they're not happy, fine. Go off and do your own thing. Even go and join AEW if you want to. If WWE don't have a place for them, then they don't have a place, and that's just business. So yeah, Bray Wyatt out for a little bit. Bella twins gone for at least the foreseeable future. Big bits of news in the run-up to WrestleMania. But now it's time to get down to business and do the recap of this last week, starting with Friday Night Smackdown from last Friday on the 10th of March. And overall impressions, it was a good show. It was a good show. A little bit of filler, a little bit of progression, good solid action from good solid talent for the most part. So let's get into it. And the evening kicked off with the fatal 5-way match to determine the number one contender for the IC title, for the Intercontinental title, and for a match with Gunther at WrestleMania. And this featured Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, Karrion Kross, LA Knight, and Xavier Woods came in for an injured Kofi Kingston. Kofi got injured during a spot on the week previous's show, so Xavier Woods dropped in, and it was a good match. It was a decent match, good talent, a little bit messy. 5 people, fatal 5-way, coming and going, a bit of flying around. The best bit though was the ending, was the finish, and I don't mean that in a bad way to say, oh, thank goodness it ended. It was a really good, fun finish where both Sheamus and Drew had 2 separate pins at exactly the same time. There happened to be 2 referees present, and both referees counted both pinfalls 1, 2, 3 at exactly the same time. So then there was confusion as to who won and who was the number one contender. Was it Drew or was it Sheamus? And what we found out later on is that Gunther isn't happy that there's essentially 2 number one contenders and that he might have to fight 2 people. He only wants to fight 1. So he got Adam Pearce to confirm that there'd be essentially a playoff match. So Drew and Sheamus on this week's SmackDown are going to face off. And then the intention is that one of them will be the number one contender and one of them will go on to face Gunther at WrestleMania. I think there's going to be some shenanigans tonight because it's been long discussed that there would be a triple threat with all three of these guys at WrestleMania. So it was a fun way to get the double pin on last week's show, and so let's see what they pull off for tonight. And then straight after that, we went into a promo with Rey Mysterio coming out, just announced as the Hall of Fame inductee, or the first Hall of Fame inductee for 2023. So he came out obviously to say his piece and to say thank you to the fans. But then obviously, lo and behold, Dom comes out, supported by the Judgment Day, to interrupt and to say about how the only Hall of Fame he should be in is the Hall of Fame for deadbeat dads. And I know it sounds corny, but Dom is getting lightning heat, legitimate lightning heat. Everyone just loves to hate on Dom, and he's leaning into it. He's leaning into like the pipsqueaky kind of he's leaning into it, and it's working really, really well. And this set up the next match on the card, which was a 6-man tag match between the Judgment Day and Legado del Fantasma. And these guys are all great. I really like Santos Escobar. He was really good in NXT. Again, good solid match with good solid talent. But the ending was the most important thing for story reasons. So Dom manages to get the pin. Dom gets the win. And so he starts mouthing off at Rey again. But this time, Rey manages to get an upper hand over Dom without even touching him. Dom runs to hit Rey as he's heading out of the ring, and Rey just pulls one of the ropes down. Dom goes flying out and gets embarrassed. So Rey is still the good guy. He's still the good dad who won't lay a finger on his son, but at least he's finally got some upper hand on Dom, which is good to see. So after that, we then went into another tag match, which was Ricochet and Braun versus the Viking Raiders. Now, I saw the live showing of SmackDown, and for me, the crowd was really quite quiet for this. I know Ricochet and Braun are quite over, so I'm wondering if the reason why the crowd was quiet is because of the Viking Raiders. They, Triple H seems to like them. He keeps using them. They keep being a mainstay of the SmackDown show. Recently feuding with Drew and Sheamus, and now they've come out against Ricochet and Braun. Maybe this was a filler just to give these guys something to do in the run up to Mania. I'm not sure. But yeah, it was interesting how quiet the crowd was, because that's often a good litmus test to see, what talent is doing well. And the rumors are starting to come out about the next round of cuts after WrestleMania, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on these guys and see what happens. But a decent match all the same, just a quiet crowd. And then it was time for Charlotte Flair versus Shotzi. Earlier in the show, Charlotte had spoken to Adam Pearce saying that she wanted a match in prep heading into WrestleMania. So Adam Pearce set her up with Shotzi. And just to get it out there, I like Charlotte Flair. I don't just like her. I think she's fantastic. I think Charlotte Flair is fantastic. She's athletic. She's got a great moveset. She's got the body. She's got a good promo. Her in-ring IQ is brilliant. She almost never has a bad match. She's highly consistent. I really like Charlotte. I know lots of people don't, and I know why. I know people think that she has been given too many opportunities. I've got thoughts on that, but unfortunately, they've not helped themselves with Charlotte's comeback this time by literally having her come back and winning the title straight away. And I personally think that has actually hurt Charlotte's run and her whole attempt to turn face. I'll get into that. Let's do the match first. So the match, see, this is the thing. The match, it was quite poor. It was really quite poor, and the crowd were quiet for it. I personally think it's because Shotzi's not over. I was at a WWE live event in the UK a little while ago, and it was one of the opening matches. No, the opening match was Shotzi versus Aaliyah. Now, Aaliyah we've not seen on TV for a while, but Shotzi was there, and the crowd were deadly silent. Um, and I think Shotzi is brilliant in the NXT brand. In that smaller, confined space, she's got the look. She kind of vibes with the style of that brand. But for some reason, I don't know what it is, but just in the bigger arenas, on the brighter main roster with Raw and SmackDown, Shotzi just hasn't connected. And the crowd was really quiet. The match was quite poor. It's a TV match, and to be honest, there are NXT women's matches that are far better than what we saw from Charlotte and Shotzi. I saw a clip of the Madison Square Garden house show on Twitter earlier this week, and Charlotte was in that. And just the 30-second clip from the house show was 10 times better than what this TV match was with Charlotte and Shotzi. So, really disappointed. Obviously, Charlotte gets the win because, of course, she does. And then we went straight into the Charlotte Rhea promo after this, because Rhea came out during the match, distracted Charlotte a bit, but Charlotte Flair being Charlotte, she still won. And this kind of leads on to what I was talking to earlier about how I think they've let Charlotte down with her return. They've not helped themselves, because this build has been a bit pants. And for me, considering the history they've got, considering how good both of these superstars are, the fact that they've just looked at each other and faced off, and that's about it. And there was a little bit of chat, and that's about it. Like, there's so much more to what this rivalry could be, what this feud could be, what this match could be. And I think they've really let it down. And I think it's mostly on Charlotte's side. And not because Charlotte is poor. As I said, I think Charlotte's fantastic. I think she's got a great promo. I think they've just screwed up this whole face turn. She came back and she just walked straight into being the women's champion again on SmackDown, which feeds into every criticism that's always leveled at Charlotte. So that doesn't help. And then they've not done anything really to establish her as a face. She's changed her language a little bit. So instead of being arrogant, she's just confident. She, spends a bit of time high-fiving the crowd as she comes in and out. She's not as nasty as she was. But there's a really fine line between confidence and arrogance. It's not the black or white shift that I think you need when you turn from heel to face. I think the Charlotte character is a great character. She is that good. She knows she's that good. She walks in that confidence of being that good, which is great. But if you've had that character for so long on an arrogant, nasty, ruthless side, there needs to be a bit more light and dark. It can't be this grey. We've not had anything where she's been an underdog and she's had to fight back against adversity, or she's been helping other people fight their battles, so she's come in as a hero or anything like that. She's not done anything that's really set her out as a strong face. And so, yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one. I think Charlotte's not had much to work with over the last few months. And I think that's coming to show in quite a painful way in this build for Charlotte Rhea. Now, we've still got a couple of weeks. The talent is still fantastic, and I've no doubt that when they actually get in the ring together, Charlotte and Rhea will bring the house down. I think these guys will be the main event of night one of WrestleMania, because that's just what they like to do. They balance it out with the main event of one night being one world title, and then the main event of the next night being the other world title. Roman's got both men's titles, so for me it makes sense that you have the women's world title on as main event for night one, and then Roman and Cody is night two. That for me makes sense. I also think that Charlotte and Rhea will be in front of Bianca and Asuka for main eventing with the world title, because I think, again, and we'll get into this when we get to Raw, I think Bianca and Asuka, they've done a poor job of building that one as well. And I think as much as Charlotte and Shotzi has been poor, I think that not Charlotte and Shotzi, Charlotte and Rhea, as much as this has been poor, I think they've still got a bit more than what Bianca and Asuka have. But back to the show, and yeah, Charlotte and Shotzi, the match, quite poor. I don't like being critical, but it genuinely was quite a poor match. The promo was lacking. Feels like they're wading through treacle. It would be great if Charlotte shows up on Raw, for example. I think it needs a point of difference. I think it needs a point of difference. I think if Charlotte was to show up on Raw and take the fight to Rhea, I think that would be really interesting. But we'll see where it goes. And then the main event of Friday Night SmackDown was the return of Jey Uso. We had the Usos come out, and this was Jey's opportunity to give his side of things, to explain himself after turning on Sami earlier in the week on Raw. And it was really, really interesting. It was really, really good, where Jey essentially comes out and said that he didn't want to turn on Sami, but he had to. He had to make a choice. He had to decide. And in the end, he's always going to choose his family. He's always going to choose his twin. He didn't want to do it, but he had to do it. And that's really interesting, because you'd think that Jey, coming back to the bloodline, would potentially be a big groveling sorry to Roman, sorry that I took so long to make a decision, sorry that I screwed things up for a few weeks. But no, Jey's come back, and it's really interesting. He's actually holding true to himself, and he's not coming back and saying that he's done it for Roman. He's saying he's coming back and he's done it for Jimmy. He's done it for his brother. So that's really interesting. And obviously this develops a bit more on Raw, which we'll get to in a moment. But on SmackDown, after Jey said his bit, Jimmy then takes over and he starts having a go at Cody Rhodes. And that Cody is sticking his nose into bloodline business, which brings Cody out, which gets a great pop from the crowd when Cody comes out, and Cody says, look, stop talking about me, start talking to me. And then whilst the Usos are distracted, Sami comes out, and then there's a bit of a brawl where essentially Cody and Sami get the upper hand and are left victorious in the ring as the Usos kind of scuttle off to the back as the show comes to an end. So we've got Cody being pushed to try and get that Sami Zayn babyface rub, because that's the problem they've got at the minute, is that Sami Zayn he's the crowd favourite. We love Cody, we do, but we love Sami more. And I don't know if WWE are a bit skeptical of that, or a bit concerned about that, or if they just know that they can't push Cody without recognising Sami at this point. So I'm not sure if they're just trying to give Cody that Sami Zayn rub, or if it's just a logical thing that they can't just dump Sami for the sake of Cody for 3 or 4 weeks. So they've got to kind of intertwine them somewhere. But for me, I think the Jimmy and Jey stuff, the Jey stuff specifically, was really, really good. Really, really interesting as to where that's going to go for the bloodline. For me, though, I think the problem here is they're working too hard to keep Roman off TV. I get, and I've said this before in on socials, that on one hand, I like how Cody and Roman have been kept apart, because it means that when they actually do face each other, it's more exciting. So like when they did on last week's SmackDown, and when they actually have a match, whether it's some kind of tag match as a little warm up, or when they actually first see each other on the pay-per-view, it'll be fire. It'll be great. But again, similar to the other promo builds for Oscar and Bianca and for Charlotte and Rhea, for me, the Cody and Roman, it needs to get physical now. We've had the smack talk from Heyman. We've had like 3 promos in a row from Cody where he's essentially said the same thing about having to win, how he needs to win, how it's his very existence to win the title at Mania. I get it. But we're 2 weeks out. I really hope things start getting physical, things start getting interesting now. Because, just keeping Roman off TV for the sake of it, I think this might fizzle out, and you don't want it to fizzle out with just 2 weeks left. So overall, SmackDown, as I said right at the start, a really good show with really good talent on show for the matches, decent promos, fairly good story progression, a few things that need to kind of kick up a gear, but overall a good show. All right, so let's go into Raw, and this was a packed show, and for me, I don't know about anybody else, but I think Raw is too long. I think a 3-hour show is too long. And I know there's a great podcast called Gorilla Position that's been on a break for a little while. But the guy who hosts that, James, he has been spot on with this. He's been saying for years that Raw is too long, and that the problems that Raw might have from time to time, especially before the Triple H era, was essentially they're trying to pad it out. They're trying to fill a 3-hour show when really 2 hours, like on SmackDown, feels about right. So Raw, it is a longer show. It is 3 hours long, so there is a lot to go through. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try and keep to the highlights as we head into WrestleMania, keep to what the most important elements were. And so you've got to start with Edge coming out at the start of the show, and it was billed for him to confront Finn Balor. Finn Balor has challenged him for a match at WrestleMania. Edge hadn't accepted. Up until this point, he wanted to come out and confront Balor in person before saying anything on the match. So they have a promo, they have a bit of backwards and forwards. Edge is basically fed up. The concerto to his wife Beth from a few months ago really was a step too far. He wants to end this. He wants this to be done. So he thinks the only way that this can be ended is with a Hell in a Cell match, which is very exciting. So this goes on with what Triple H said a few months ago, where he actually cancelled the Hell in a Cell branded pay-per-view. And when he did that, he said it was because these kind of matches, they're not as special if they're just a gimmick pay-per-view. The whole point of a match like Hell in a Cell is that it's rare, is that it's the only way to resolve a blood feud that's this deep. And so for me, this is perfect. It has been rumoured for a little while, but Edge versus Finn Balor in Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania, it's on. And Balor made a slight reference to how the cell can't contain his demons. So it's possible that Balor might be bringing back the demon persona for the match, which would be really, really exciting, because the demon persona has only been beaten once, and that was when he took on Roman Reigns, and even then it was a little controversial in Roman's run. So that, two great talents, Edge and Finn, two of the best in the business. Hell in a Cell match, WrestleMania, that is going to be an epic encounter, and I can't wait for that. And that promo, obviously it broke down the Judgment Day. They went and attacked Edge, so that brought out Gargano and Dexter Lumis, who were set to have a tag match with Dominic and Priest. So they came out and they helped Edge with the brawl, and then after the commercial break, it came back for their tag match. And this was a really, really good tag match. It was a really, really good match. Great talent on show. Great match psychology. Great moves. Some really good spots. And for me, a really good finish. Damian Priest, he's kind of been sat at the back of the Judgment Day for a little bit, because Finn's been, against Edge. Dom's had Rhea. Rhea's been Rhea, and she's been a shining star in that group. So it was really nice to see that Priest was the one who actually got the win in the tag match. He lifted Dexter Lumis up for a very high chokeslam, like straight arm above his head, and Dexter Lumis, straight arm above his head, and Dexter Lumis is a tall guy, and so straight arm above his head and then all the way down in a sitting chokeslam was a really good move to finish. So Damian Priest and Dom got the 1, 2, 3, and yeah, just a really good match. But straight after the match, we went into a backstage scene where we saw Damage Control giving a really brutal beatdown on Trish. So Trish Stratus, obviously we're building towards the 3-on-3, the Becky, Lita and Trish versus Damage Control at WrestleMania. I've previously said on social that this has all felt really awkward. It's been really obvious that Lita and Trish have been away for a long time, and that their side of the promo has been really, really weak. So this was actually, for me, really good. It became physical, and Trish sold the bumps really, really well. She got hammered against a wall. She got hammered against one of the travel cases that they have for the gear. It was a really, really good scene, really impactful, and then this became an ongoing story throughout the rest of the show. So later on, there was another segment where Becky and Lita showed up to check on Trish, and obviously they were really cross because of what had happened. And then later on, Trish came out of the doctor's area and had one of those backstage interviews where she basically said that Damage Control have just done the worst thing now because they've really pissed her off. So for me, that's really good. They don't need another in-ring promo face-to-face segment. They're struggling with that. This, where it's much more direct, it's short, it's sharp, it's hard-hitting, really, really good. And on social this week, Trish Stratus did put up a picture where she seems to have a bit of a bruise on her face, bit of a black eye. So it was maybe a bit too physical. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, a really good spot, really good segment to get that feud, to get that match promo up to the next level. Then up next was Omos and Brock face to face for the first time. There's been promos from MVP that have really helped move this along, because there was quite a bit of backlash, as I've said previously in the news section, about splitting up Brock and Bobby. Their feuds, their rivalry seemed to be going really well and naturally going to that final conclusion at Mania, and then splitting them up. And there was a lot of confusion as to why Brock and Omos were paired together for Mania. MVP helped kind of move this along, but I'm telling you, this segment on Raw, Brock did a fantastic job of putting Omos over, and actually all credit to Brock, because there's been stories where Brock has, apparently been difficult and not wanting to work with certain people and not wanting to put certain people over. Brock is doing business with Omos right now. That segment where it was quite small, it was quite short, but they were face to face in the ring. Omos towered over Brock. Brock actually went and stood right next to Omos and actually gave that visual of Omos being head and shoulders above Brock. And then they did just a simple handshake, but with the camera angle, Omos's hand is massive compared to Brock's hand, because he is a giant. He is 7'3". And then they did the handshake, but Omos didn't let go. And not only that, but then he manhandled Brock with his whole hand on Brock's face as a full face palm, and then pushing him out of the ring over the top rope. A little bit of a botch with that initial shove over the top rope. It took a couple of attempts to get Brock over, which some on the internet have picked up and have started making fun of, and WWE have edited out of their highlights package. But to be honest, that handshake, that face palm to Brock Lesnar from Omos, again, for me, that's just taking my interest and my intrigue in this feud to a whole other level now. I was genuinely skeptical. Like, I didn't care about this a couple of weeks ago. I didn't care about Omos. I wondered why he'd been put in with Brock, just like most of the internet. But then MVP's promo came out, did a good job, and now, yeah, it's building. It's a bit strange because it has come out of the blue, but I think the fact they've had 3 or 4 or 5 weeks to kind of build towards this, I think we are going to get to the point where the match at WrestleMania, it will be a bit of a stunt match. I don't think it'll go that long. I think it'll probably be maybe 5 or 10 minutes with a couple of big spots. But I do want to see it. I am interested based on the promos that we've had so far. And then it was time for Cody Rhodes versus LA Knight. And it's a strange one because you think Cody Rhodes, he's the face of the Raw brand at the moment. So your main star, you'd have him at the start of the show or as the headliner closing the show, instead coming out right in the middle. And I wonder if that's because they are struggling with that 3 hour time and they want to give people reasons to keep watching the full 3 hours. But regardless, Cody came out and had a decent match with LA Knight. I think they both, for me, they both need more time in the ring. I think it's evident that Cody's not been day after day, day and night for the last 6 months. I think it shows that LA Knight had a largely promo-based feud with Bray Wyatt for a while, and so that he's a little bit out of practice. I think both of these guys need to have regular matches. I think that's what was shown, but they're still both really good talents. So it was still a decent match with some good spots. Cody breaking out the super cutter before the finish, which always goes down well. So it was a good match, and afterwards Cody gave, again, another fantastic promo and building up for WrestleMania. He's a good promo, he really is. But as I said with the SmackDown roundup, there's only so many promos he can give. We need more. It needs more. We need him and Roman to be face to face. So hopefully we're gonna get that. It was an excellent promo, but yeah, hopefully we're gonna get more with Roman being involved physically soon. Then there was quite a bit, because it's a 3 hour show. There was a bit of filler, so I'm just gonna speed through a little bit of a summary of this middle section. So after Cody's promo, there was a backstage interview with Seth that essentially set up the fact that Logan Paul is going to be on next week's episode of Raw doing a special edition of his hit podcast Impulsive. So that'll be very interesting. It's also interesting that instead of having Logan Paul come into Miz TV or the KO show, that they're actually bringing the Impulsive show onto Raw. So I think that's quite interesting brand synergy. It'll be interesting to see if Logan Paul brings the rest of the Impulsive crew over with him, especially as I saw a clip from the show last week. His brother Jake Paul took shots at Seth quite strongly. So it'll be interesting to see if Jake Paul comes over, if there's any interaction with Seth there. But that's setting up to be a really big show next week if Logan Paul's going to be there. And also Paul Heyman came out in his promo after Cody's promo and said that Roman Reigns is going to be at Raw next week in person. So you're going to have Logan Paul and Roman Reigns on Raw 2 weeks out from WrestleMania. So next week's Raw is going to be really, really good. Is John Cena going to come back and develop anything more with Austin Theory? We'll see. So next week's Raw is looking good. But coming back to this week's Raw, after that interview, Bronson Reed had his match with Elias, and decent match. A bit quick. It was a squash match essentially, just to push Bronson Reed. They're still introducing him as a character, as a force. He kind of came in and then he got dropped into the Elimination Chamber. He is a good performer. He is a force of nature, but they're having to build him up. So it was a decent match, just building Reed on his journey. Had a couple of backstage segments. One from Chad Gable, where he's essentially starting to lose Otis to Maximum Male models. Otis is becoming Otis, which is fun, and it's nice because it gives Otis and Chad Gable something to do. The Alpha Academy's been fantastic. I think they've been going for at least a year now. I really like these guys, but it gives another dimension to their story and their characters. Although for me, the whole Otis element with Maxine Dupree, it has shades of the Otis and Mandy to it from a few years ago, if you remember that. So I don't know if they're treading old water, but it works. It's fun. So we'll see how it goes. And then another backstage segment, this time with Kevin Owens, that was just promoting his street fight with Solo Sikoa, that was going to close the show, and him saying essentially what he's been saying for weeks. He's going to keep fighting the Bloodline and he's going to keep doing it on his own. And then we had a reminder of, there's no other word for it, demolition. John Cena did not hold any punches in his promo with Austin Theory last week. So we had a full recap of the demolition of what that promo was from John Cena. Interesting, WWE cut around it a bit to make it a bit more fluid, because I thought at the time the promo was a bit messy and you could tell that John Cena had been out of the game for a little bit. But the promo package that WWE have edited is really tight, and that set up the match with Austin Theory and Angelo Dawkins. They'd had a bit of beef backstage where the Street Profits had been making fun of Austin Theory, calling him Baby Cena, and so Theory obviously took offense to that, and so wanted to take on Angelo Dawkins. And this was a really good match. Montez Ford stayed at the back, so this was a true singles match for Dawkins, and they're both really good talents. Theory is really, really good in ring, and so is Dawkins, and it was a really good match. But obviously in the road to WrestleMania, there was only going to be one winner, so Theory won the match. But after the match, he took it a step too far by putting the STF, which is John Cena's favourite submission move. He put that on a downed Dawkins and was really raking it quite hard, which caused Tez to come out to chase off Theory and to protect Dawkins. And then not only had Theory done one of John Cena's moves, but then as he's walking up the ramp, he goes straight to the camera and he does the John Cena hand wave, "You can't see me," which got a great pop. Well, a great boo from the crowd. A great boo from the crowd. So as much as Cena, it felt like he'd buried Theory the week before. I think Theory, he's not backing down. He's standing up. He's doing what he needs to do. And so I think, give him a couple more weeks. Hopefully he gets one over on Cena before WrestleMania to kind of build a little bit of threat, a little bit of danger, to give him a reason as to, why he could win at Mania. But yeah, good solid match, good promo. And then you're coming into, there was a few other promos which I've already recapped, I've kind of summarized. I'm not going in full kind of linear order, but the next main point of interest was Rey Mysterio, again coming out to talk about his Hall of Fame, and again being interrupted by Dom, but this time after weeks if not months of it seemingly Dom coming out and having the same script and it going the same way, where Dom pushes Rey and is trying to get something out of him, and Rey says, "No, I'm not going to lay a finger on you. I love you. You're still my son." We finally got an official challenge from Dom for a match at WrestleMania. We finally got a challenge, but Rey, still being Rey, said no. Rey still doesn't want to fight Dom. Obviously, I think, and it's quite plain to see, that Dom is just going to keep pushing this for the next couple of weeks, and he's going to push Rey too far, and we are going to get a match at Mania. And hopefully it'll be the first of a series of matches. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends in a career match for Rey, and Dom is the one who retires Rey. I think Rey's of an age, he's been put into the Hall of Fame. I think it'll be a great way for him to go out. Doing this kind of angle with his son having such red heat as well, red hot heat. So I think personally this is going to rumble on, and then during the Hall of Fame ceremony the night before Mania, Dom will kind of push things too far, and Rey, his family will be there, his wife will be there, his kids will be there. I think it'll just be all too much, and Rey just will have to accept. So we'll see how that goes over the next couple of weeks, but I think that's what's going to happen. And then we're coming into the last 45 minutes or so of Raw. So it's the headliners. And so you have Bianca Belair as your Raw Women's Champion, her match with Chelsea Green. And it was a decent match. I personally was hoping for more, but I'm guessing this point on the show, they were tight to time. They had a few things that they needed to hit. The main point of this was to establish Chelsea and Carmella as a pair. Like they've now come out and supported each other 2 weeks in a row, coming out for each other's matches. So they're now established as a pair. And then obviously you've got to get Bianca over, and you've got to have a little bit of time for her and Asuka to have a moment. So as you'd expect, Bianca Belair, Raw Women's Champion, beats Chelsea in a decent match. But then Chelsea and Carmella attack Bianca. Asuka comes out, runs off Chelsea and Carmella, and again has a staring match with Bianca, essentially. She puts a flavour to it. She puts her Asuka flavour to it. So it wasn't just a stare off. Asuka picked up Bianca's belt and did a little bit of a funny dance to it, a little bit of a celebration with it. And Bianca was getting more and more annoyed and was just saying, look, give me the belt back. And then Asuka started that blue mist dribbling from her mouth and that maniacal smile, that kind of, she's not all there. She's a bit of a maniac. Had that vibe. But again, nothing happened. No words, no violent interchange, no attack. Just Asuka looking a bit freaky. And then she gave Bianca her belt back, and that was it. So again, it's similar to what Charlotte and Rhea and what their issue is. There's been no real build to this. There hasn't. Asuka won the Elimination Chamber. She became the number one contender. She's got this new attitude. She's got this new kind of creepy persona. But they've not done anything with it. They've not. And all they've had is just a couple of face-offs. And I get that they're wanting to keep Asuka as a face. And so you're just like, what can you do when you've got a face versus a face? But I'm not bothered. I'm not interested. There's nothing there in this feud for me. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Comment on the podcast or reach out on TikTok and Twitter, the hashtag @ImagineThePop. Be really interested to hear what you guys think. I personally think they've dropped the ball. I think they've got a lot to do in the next 2 weeks. This coming week on Raw, they've got Bianca and Asuka in a tag team. So again, it's the typical face versus face. We can't put them against each other. We can't have them being bad guys against each other. So, let's put them in the same match, and I'll bet there'll be some misunderstanding where one of them will hit the other or be forced to hit the other, or which will kind of cause someone to kind of flip out. But we've seen it before. This is a world title match at WrestleMania. And the talent that you've got in the ring in Bianca and Asuka, I think their match will be really good. It'll be a really good match. Asuka never disappoints, and Bianca is a fantastic talent. But at the minute, I don't care. I don't. They've not built this feud into anything that I'm really that bothered in seeing. It's the kind of thing where if I saw the result on Twitter the next day, fine. I'm not desperate to see this match to make sure that it doesn't get spoiled for me. Bianca has done like a digital exclusive interview where she's actually shown some grit and some spice, and more of that, please. More of that attitude from Bianca on normal TV, on real TV, not just in a digital side. That'd be really, really good. Rant over on that one. And then the main event of Raw. The main event was Kevin Owens versus Solo Sikoa in a street fight. And this for me is a good example of Triple H and the creative team at WWE making the TV shows worth watching, giving us a reason. So a unique stipulation, which is a street fight. They're obviously not going to go the whole way that they would do on a pay-per-view. And it's obviously not going to be like it is on AEW, where they're bleeding within the first 2 seconds of the match. But it was still a good, solid match that put Solo over. Kevin Owens, he's over. We know he'll keep fighting. And there was an excellent spot with him getting body slammed onto a row of 6 chairs, 3 either side, which is a really good spot. And there was some good moments, but essentially this match was designed with 2 things in mind. 1, put Solo over, and 2, demonstrate that Kevin Owens can't fight the bloodline by himself. Because of course, what happened? It's a street fight, no disqualification rules. So Jimmy and Jay ambush Kevin Owens in the back as they've been fighting through to the back. Jimmy and Jay ambush Kevin Owens. The 3 of them beat him down. And then Solo Sikoa does that Samoan spike to Kevin Owens and gets the 3 count. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. Solo and the Usos end the show walking off victorious, walking off dominant. And what I'm hoping was just a really good sell by Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens actually looks like he's had a little bit of sick, a little bit of vomit. Like the Samoan spike is so devastating. He's been beaten up so bad that there was actually, some vomit that was on some bile that was on the ring next to Kevin's mouth. So it was really, really good in pushing Solo, in pushing that narrative that KO can't do it by himself. So we are working towards, there's no doubt about it, that KO and Sammy are going to have to join at some point. They're squeezing every last bit of juice. They're holding off on the pop for this as long as possible. When it does happen, when KO and Sammy do join forces, it is going to be really exciting. But for now, the bloodline stays strong. Kevin Owens left in a heap in the middle of the ring. And so that was Raw. And, a lot of really good stuff on Raw. I hope you've heard how much I actually liked it. There was a lot of good matches, a lot of good promos, a little bit too much filler. It needs to be tighter for me personally, but a really good episode that takes its place on the road to WrestleMania. And that's it. That's episode 1 done, in the can. If you're still with us after nearly an hour, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to invest. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you've been informed. I hope you've been sharing the joy with us. That's the whole point of Imagine the Pop, both this podcast and what we do on social. It's all about sharing the joy that is professional wrestling. So we'd love to hear from you. Love for you to get involved. As I said earlier, Imagine the Pop is on TikTok and Twitter with the same handle, at Imagine the Pop. And let's just go on this journey together. I've had a great time putting this episode together. I look forward to doing many more episodes. I look forward to spicing things up a little bit with other contributors, so it's not just me talking all the time, going through any questions that you guys send in. I'd love to get to a point where we've got interviews with either contributors or even the Holy Grail. Let's get some WWE wrestlers. Let's get some interviews. That'll be fantastic. But yeah, so thank you again for being with us the whole way through. And I'm going to leave you with this last little thought. Imagine the Pop as a name, as a concept, came from a documentary that I saw of Mick Foley and Triple H talking about their famous street fight match at Royal Rumble, I think in 2000. And Mick Foley was talking about how there were thumbtacks in the ring, and I think he'd already had a backdrop onto the thumbtacks. They'd already had one pop. But the next question was, how were they going to finish? And obviously Triple H was always going to finish with the pedigree, but the idea of a pedigree onto thumbtacks. So obviously Mick Foley in this documentary is talking about how uneasy, even someone like Mick Foley, who has a history of hardcore and has done crazy things to his body over the years, he was still like, is this a good idea, doing a pedigree face first down into thumbtacks? But he says in the documentary, he says in the interview, I could lose an eye, but imagine the pop. And so for me, that's where it comes from, this idea of imagine the pop. Wrestlers do amazing things. They risk their lives, they risk their bodies, to give us great entertainment. And then also we love the entertainment side of wrestling with the storylines, with the drama, with the soap opera of it all. So for me, I love thinking about the next Imagine the Pop when. So what's the next thing that's going to really surprise and really pop the crowd? Is it going to be Cody winning at WrestleMania? Is it going to be Jay turning on Roman? Is it going to be Sammy and KO teaming together and winning the tag titles off the Usos? There's so many things, and I'm sure you've got a whole load of ideas about, when the next pop is going to come from. But I'm going to leave you with this. Imagine the pop when Randy Orton comes back at WrestleMania to cost Cody the title. Cody's got it won. Cody's got the title won. But Randy Orton comes out of nowhere, gives him the RKO, costs him the title. Imagine the pop when that happens. Thank you guys. Take care.